Hi everyone, I am back with another video. This time around I'm not doing a studio vlog like I have been doing. I'm going to be doing an art assignment. So I have this book called You Are an Artist by Sarah Urist Green. Sarah did a YouTube channel several years ago where she interviewed different artists and created each of those artists created an assignment for anyone to do. And so this YouTube channel has a bunch of art assignments on it. They compiled a bunch of those into this book, and I want to try and complete all of the art assignments in this book. So there are quite a few. There's like 53 or something like that. And the first one that I'm going to do is called Become Someone Else. And it is an assignment from the artist Dedeaux-Norris. So the assignment is to take a selfie before I go out into the world and then take a selfie after I go out into the world. When I go out into the world, I have changed something about myself. So that might be something about my physical appearance or the way that I talk or just the way that I act, maybe the way I carry myself, I decide to change. And kind of the idea behind this assignment is to just explore identity and how your identity shifts even with making like very small changes. So the thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to the park and I'm going to ride a bike, like a lap around the park with a speaker and play music from the speaker while riding the bike around the park. This is not normally something I would do, but I see other people doing it and I think it is really cool and fun, and I have been wanting to just do that, like do something I wouldn't normally do, something that makes me a little uncomfortable, play loud music out of a speaker while in public. So that's what I'm going to be doing. This is kind of the before, like this is the before me now. It's almost Halloween, so I've got my Halloween earrings on, but yeah, I'm really excited. And then afterward, I'll come back and we can kind of talk about the assignment and how I felt and just talk about identity in general and how our identity kind of shifts and doesn't in some ways, like how identity is just this like very interesting concept that I've been thinking about a lot, especially after moving to New York and feeling like my identity has shifted a little bit being in a new place. So yeah, when I come back, we'll talk more. Okay, I just finished my musical bike ride. I played the This Is Muna playlist on Spotify. So it's like all the Muna hits. I'm wearing my Life's So Fun Muna sweatshirt from the concert. So I feel like I was riding around like a Muna superfan, which actually I think added to the fun because I am so rarely a big fan of something like a musical group or pop star that, I don't know, it's fun to be just like unapologetically into something. And yeah, so yeah, I had a lot of fun riding the bike around the park. The uphill, I will say, was not enjoying that part as much, but the downhills where I really hit my stride and was like grooving along. I got 2 compliments on my earrings, so that was cool. Both of the people asked if they glow in the dark, which they do. I got these at Walgreens. Like, sometimes you just have to be on the lookout for the best earrings at like unexpected spots. But yeah, I'm going to walk home and then we can chat more about the art assignment. bike ride around the park where I listened to music from a speaker while riding the bike as this experiment in becoming someone else, doing something, changing something about myself to see how I feel, how I change the way I think about myself by changing a behavior. So I'll post kind of like the before and after selfies that I took doing this assignment. I felt afterward a lot more, I guess, free and just like I could take on the world a little bit more. I think it was an exercise in like caring less about what other people think and taking up more space, like playing my music loudly near other people is normally something that I wouldn't do, but there's really nothing preventing me from doing that or preventing anyone from doing that. And when you're riding a bike, it's also like not super disruptive because you're just continually moving. You're not like standing next to the same person playing music loudly. Anyway, I really had a great time. It felt so fun. I do have a lot of fun when I ride bikes. I just never do it because I think for me, it's something I would want to do as like a way to commute and get to places. And I hate having to think about like, okay, do I need, like what bag do I need to carry, like changing my outfit and like the way I'm dressing just to like make sure that I can ride a bike. But I have so much fun on a bike and I feel great when I'm riding it. So I don't know, as long as I'm like not in too much crazy traffic and whatnot, like throughout the park, it's really beautiful. It was such a beautiful day. So yeah, I think just in general, riding a bike and listening to music is something I would like to do more in the future. I've been thinking about this art assignment all week because I, read the little section of the book, You Are an Artist, about this art assignment and about Dedeaux-Norris, who is the artist who assigned this project to us. Dedeaux-Norris is an artist who plays with their identity a lot in their art, and the kind of situation that sparked this assignment was one day TJ was just playing around with some, like, hanging out with friends, decided to like put on like a little bit of a mustache, like cut pieces of her hair and put them into a mustache on her face, and then walk outside and just see how she felt differently. And she just talks about how it wasn't like that big of a change, but it caused her to kind of like at a certain point, and she was in the grocery store, stop. And it was like when she was in an aisle all by herself, it's not like anyone else was there, that she stopped and sort of was like thinking about, oh, how am I supposed to walk now? Or do I talk different now? Just like that inner monologue that's happening was more interesting than necessarily like being around other people with the change that she had made. So after I read the little chapter about Dedeaux-Norris and this assignment, I went ahead and I was just intrigued by this artist, and I watched a couple of her artist talks on YouTube. And there was this one that she did, I think it was last year, where she had a show at an art museum, I think somewhere in Iowa, and the assignment was kind of like saying goodbye, from what I understood from the artist talk, was her saying goodbye to one of her personas that she had built throughout the years. And so it was kind of like a memorial or a death to this persona that was Tamika Jean. So now TJ Dedeaux-Norris goes by TJ Dedeaux-Norris, but Tamika Jean was kind of like this younger persona that existed for her and made a bunch of art. And Tamika Jean was basically just like the name that she went by at a certain point in her life when she was younger, when she was going through art school, when she was like at Yale, just like how she had all of these experiences where she was Tamika Jean. And as she's gotten older and kind of had like lived more lives, she just wanted to like let Tamika Jean rest. And I thought that was a really powerful and interesting way to think about one's identity, that maybe like a past self, like you understand or recognize that there's a moment where like this version of yourself doesn't necessarily need to die, but it is a death in a way, but that they're tired and that they want and need to sleep, and that this new version of yourself, this new persona, can take over from here and kind of like carry and hold the burdens that this past version of yourself, this younger version, wasn't capable of really holding altogether. So I thought that was a really interesting way to think about your identity as like having personas. And I think a lot of artists have different personas that they kind of play into when they are making art. And I've thought about that as, me kind of building an art practice, like, oh, maybe I should use a pseudonym. I think that social media and like Instagram handles allow us to do that pretty easily, where you could pick like an Instagram handle that's just like a totally wacky name that maybe would allow me to feel more free or less constrained by my like current self if I were just like making art as this persona that I, could be on social media or just like when I'm making art, etc. I'm reminded of Beyonce. I think at one point had like this Sasha Fierce persona. And it also reminded me of growing up, and like as a kid, everyone called me Sammy. And now that I'm older, that version of myself I did kind of put that version of myself to rest. And I don't even really remember when that happened, but I know now that whenever someone calls me Sammy, especially if they didn't know me when I was younger, it feels really strange. It's like, that's not my name anymore. Like that was like my name as a kid. I don't go by that name anymore. I go by Sam or Samantha. And I remember my mom talking about this when I was a kid, where she told me that she didn't like when people called her Steffi. Her name's Stephanie. And that Steffi was like a name she got called as a kid. And I remember thinking two things when she told me this. I remember thinking, number one, it's important to call people by the name they prefer, and like that was a sign of showing someone respect. Was like, if my mom didn't like it when people called her Steffi, it was important for people to respect that and for me to respect that. And in my life, that's been something that I've taken with me. And so I think when certain people in my life have transitioned or started to go by a different name, it wasn't that difficult for me to just like accept that we would be calling someone by a new name, and that was the name they preferred, because I had already experienced that with my mom growing up. I do remember, the second thing I remember when that happened was, as a kid, I couldn't imagine not wanting to be called Sammy at that point. Like I was like, in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, well, my mom might want to not be called Steffi anymore, but I will always want to be called Sammy. And that's totally not the case. Like, nobody really calls me that anymore unless you knew me when I was a kid. TJ Dedeaux-Norris talking about like putting to rest Tamika Jean, I feel like that's something that in some ways I've done with Sammy. I like put her to rest at a certain point, and now I go by Sam or Samantha. I think about that too, like which name do I prefer, Sam or Samantha? And most of the time I tell people I don't care, because I really don't. I think either one is fine. But I was thinking in the context of this assignment, I was like, oh, maybe like as an artist, I should be Samantha, and then as like a software engineer, I should go by Sam, and like that would be an easy separation between these like two personas that I have. So if you don't know, my day job is working as a software engineer, and in relation to this assignment, you start to realize how much as people in today's society, we are already like changing our identity in different contexts. Like me going out and riding the bike with the music was different for sure for me, but I'm always doing this kind of like switching who we are, presenting different versions of ourselves in different contexts. At work, I am a software engineer, and I try to bring like a more professional, I think, presentation of like who I am, and like I like to get work done. And then in my personal life, I'm working on building this art practice, and I do think I'm a little bit more silly and free-spirited than what I present at work. Yeah, so once again, like, this one art assignment just started this wave of all these thoughts about like identity and how we present ourselves in the world. And just last week, I got promoted to a tech lead at my job, which is exciting. And yeah, it's nice to be recognized and like to get a promotion in that way, recognized for like the work that you're doing. But it's caused me another kind of like identity crisis in a way, because now not only am I a software engineer, I'm a tech lead. And what does that mean for like the way I present myself to the people that I now manage? And how do I like shift into that in a way that doesn't feel like totally disjointed from who I was when I was just an individual contributor? And in some ways, maybe that shift doesn't need to happen, but in my head, it does feel like I'm processing that. Like, oh, all these people that used to be just my colleagues, I'm now their manager. And what does it mean to be their manager? Like, do I have to tone it down in some way or bring more of myself to the job in another way? And I'm trying to figure that out. And I think TJ Dedeaux-Norris, it seemed like, has a lot of different personas that she kind of plays into in different contexts. And I guess I've been in my life more so trying to weave all of the different parts of me together into one person instead of like having different personas that I play into. And I think being able to weave all of the parts of you together into one cohesive, or attempting to do that into one identity, is a privilege that not everyone has. So I recognize that for sure. So in addition to this art assignment and learning about TJ Dedeaux-Norris, I read an article this week, and it's in the New Yorker. It's called "Are You the Same Person You Used to Be?" And it's a pretty long article about this exact like idea about like, are you the same person you were as a kid? Are you completely different? Like, how we each think about our own identity is kind of like each person has their own conceptualization about how they change or don't change as a person. And the author kind of talks about researching these concepts throughout several years, like decades even. There's kind of like groups of people. There's dividers who kind of divide their life and saying like, those would be like the people who maybe like say that they have different personas at different stages of their lives, versus continuers, who are people who are like, I've always been this person, I've always been this way. But it started to make me think about like, oh, am I a divider or a continuer? Like, do I divide my life into like certain, kind of periods of like when I was that person and I'm no longer that person? Or am I a continuer where like, I think I always have been the person that I am today? And I think that personally, I think I mishmash those together in certain contexts. Like, I think I've always been interested since I was a kid in like being creative and making things. So that's kind of like a thread that I've weaved throughout my life. But in some ways, I look at past versions of myself, like version of myself in college when I was like dating like guys that were just like not great for me, and how I like barely recognize that person from, my early 20s, late teens. I did want to talk about, since we're talking about identity and identity shifts, just certain things that I think have changed or have shifted for me in my identity and in my behavior since moving to New York. I stopped wearing makeup. I don't know, I feel pretty okay with that decision. Sometimes I still wear lipstick. That's kind of fun. Like, it's fun to just put on like one thing that kind of changes an outfit, changes my identity in a way. I stopped drinking milk, which, if you knew me in New Mexico, like, I've always just drank a lot of milk, which I know is a weird thing to say as an adult, but I moved here and kind of just felt like I needed to figure out some of my gut health, so I stopped drinking milk. And I do feel better. I deleted all of my social media, well, most of it. I deleted my Instagram and my Twitter. I think I did it was sometime last month. Like, I deleted them. I didn't like just deactivate or log off or delete the apps. Like, I deleted the accounts. And the Instagram account I've had since, early college, which, it does, I think this points to maybe me feeling like a past version of myself. Like, it was time to let that past version rest. And every time I just logged onto social media, I just started to think about, like, what did my profile say about me? And like, now that I'm here, I feel like a totally different person. And this old account was almost just like, it felt like it was haunting me. So I just deleted it. And I feel fine. I feel good. I didn't feel like I was being super productive or healthy on social media. So yeah, we'll see if I get, an account back in the future. But as I was deleting the accounts, I was also reminded of, there's this designer that I followed on Twitter. Her name is Carolyn Zhang, and she has written about like this disconnect between having like a current Twitter profile pic and like a tweet you wrote 5 years ago, like next to each other, because when you change your Twitter profile pic, it changes for all of your past tweets. Like, it's not like you have a line where like, this was my old profile pic for these older tweets. Like, it changes throughout your entire profile, and how kind of like disconnected that can feel. And I think that's also how I felt on Twitter and Instagram. Like, it would just be weird to see like my current profile pic next to some tweet that I tweeted 5-6 years ago. Like, I just didn't make sense anymore for me to like have those profiles up. So yeah, I deleted them. I kind of have stopped staying out late, and this is, I think, probably part of just getting older, but it is also a conscious decision, kind of like wearing makeup. Like, I just don't feel great when I stay out super late, so I try to get home earlier. And it's also kind of weird saying that, knowing that I live in New York, where there's so much nightlife, but I have just decided that I prefer the day and prefer having like really full weekends where I'm out and about during the day, and at night I kind of head to bed a little bit earlier. One thing I'm trying to change and currently working on, which this is kind of a lifelong process for me, I think, is not being so much of a people pleaser and being more comfortable with conflict, and realizing that, truly understanding that conflict isn't a bad thing. So I'm trying to say I disagree when I do disagree, and not letting that make me feel uncomfortable or being afraid to say that. We have a cat here. Hi. Yeah. I'm trying to be better with letting the conflict just happen, and working on resolving the conflict in a healthy way and not avoiding the conflict entirely. I think this is something that, like, in my family, on both sides, we avoid conflict. And so this is like some deep soul work that needs to happen in order for me to truly be comfortable amidst a conflict or some sort of disagreement. Okay, that was a lot. I really enjoyed this art assignment, and I am excited to do more of them. Let me know if you liked this kind of style of video and if you enjoyed these assignments. I'll post the link to the art assignment channel and this assignment in particular that was posted on the YouTube channel. I'll also post a link to the Muna playlist that I played on my bike ride. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.